Hello everyone, welcome to the MudRoom, our weekly free and live uncommon sense parenting class. How is everyone today? How are we already halfway through April? I don't know how, but everything feels like it's simultaneously dragging and absolutely speeding past. But we are officially into spring here in Canada. It feels glorious, even if we were still under lockdown here in Ontario. But, on the whole, I'd much rather be in lockdown during the spring than in the dead of winter. All right, before we jump into our topic today, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Allana Robinson. I'm a parenting coach for parents of toddlers, preschoolers, and kindergartners. I help you understand why your children are misbehaving and how to fix it without yelling, shaming, or timeouts. I'm your host here on the MudRoom. I'm also the host of the Parenting Posse Facebook group, and I'm the creator of the Parentability program where I help you raise well-behaved kids of your own. No matter where you're catching this class, please like and subscribe so that you never miss another one. It also helps us reach more parents who need support. So we have talked a lot about stress on the MudRoom in the past, and if you want to catch up on all that has been said, you can totally find that information on my blog. But whenever I talk about stress, I inevitably get multiple people either getting really defensive about the idea that their child could possibly be stressed, or having practical panic attacks over the idea that their child is stressed because isn't stress toxic? So I wanted to talk about the concept that all stress is toxic because it's not, okay? If you've got other stuff to do and you want to duck out early, that's the punchline. Not all stress is toxic. There are 3 kinds of stress, okay? And just as a refresher, we're talking about energy expenditure here. We're not talking about worry, okay? Adults, we spend a lot of energy worrying, so that's why we conflate the two. But we're just talking about energy expenditure. Everything that we do requires us to expend some energy, and therefore everything is somewhat stressful. So first we have positive stress. Positive stress is brief, it is healthy, and it is normal, okay? By brief, I mean a few hours, okay? Not 10 minutes. This is the kind of stress that we experience when we're doing everyday hard things. Taking a hard test, doing something new that scares us, sleep training, starting a new daycare or school, learning to play independently, public speaking, meeting new people. Okay, these are the things that last a couple of hours and then they're over. But what really makes it positive stress, it's not its duration. It's that we have the support of secure relationships before and after we do the thing, okay? In an adult context, that means that we have our friends and they amp us up before we go on an interview for a job that we really want. And then we go and do the interview, it's really hard and we have no idea if they liked us or not. And then afterwards, we go home and our spouse gets us a drink and asks how it went, right? The secure relationships in our lives are there before and afterwards, and we feel supported and celebrated and loved. Notice that I put sleep training in this category because proper sleep training is generally a 1 or 2 hour period of distress. We prepare them for it, we sing them songs, we read a book, we give them snuggles, and then we leave the room and shut the door and they have 1 to 2 hours of distress before they fall asleep at most. Generally, it's over in under half an hour. And then in the morning, we're there, we're happy, we're loving on them and giving them kisses and hugs and praise. They experienced a brief period of stress, but were still supported by their secure relationships. They weren't in danger, their basic needs were met, they just did something hard. Same with playing independently. Parents often freak out when I suggest that they leave their child in their playroom for an hour to figure it out. But you're loving on them before, they're fed and dry and not in any form of danger, and then you come back and you're loving on them again. They did something hard, but they were still supported by their secure relationships. This is the kind of stress that is extremely beneficial because it gives our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems practice experiencing stress and then recovering. And the more we practice that cycle of having some stress and recovering from it, the more resilient our nervous system gets, and eventually it stops experiencing acute stress from events that we do frequently, like falling asleep. I used to sweat out doing these MudRoom classes, y'all. I was nervous and terrified. But the more that I've done them, the less stress they became, the less energy they take to do, And now the mudroom is just a normal part of my week, so I no longer experience acute stress from it. The same thing with sleep training. It's hard at first learning how to put yourself to sleep, but the more they do it, the better they get at it. And before you know it, they're 4 and saying things like, I think I need a nap to help my body heal, after they, scrape their knee, and then putting themselves down for a nap, which, yes, my 4-year-old did do this week. Positive stress becomes less stressful the more it happens. Okay, next we have tolerable stress. Tolerable stress is more prolonged stress, but it is still buffered by our positive, secure relationships. Things like the death of a loved one, a natural disaster, witnessing a car crash, divorce. These are more prolonged events that have more of a sustained effect, but we are still supported in navigating them by our friends, family, and the systems around us, right? If your grandmother dies, most workplaces are going to give you the week off so that you can grieve, cope, be with your secure relationships, and recover. When I was in early intervention, I was driving to a client's home to take them to preschool, and I witnessed a man on a motorcycle get run over by a cube van. And I called my boss. I was in tears. And then she gave me the afternoon off, and I went home and cried to my husband and forbade him from ever buying a motorcycle. But that was tolerable stress. Will I ever forget seeing that? No. But I was able to cope with it with the support of my spouse, my workplace, and my friends. An example of my son's experiencing tolerable stress is about this time 2 years ago. I woke up with a UTI. I knew as soon as I woke up I had a UTI. I called my doctor before I even got out of bed, and then I immediately got into the shower so I could go to the lab so that I could get a prescription. And while I was in the shower, I passed out, and my oldest, who was 5 at the time, found me. And he panicked and called my mom, who called 911, and then she called a friend who is local to me to come and get my kids because my husband was out of town at the time. So first, he found his mom unconscious in the shower. Then all these strangers swarmed the house, and then they had to stay at the house with a random police officer until my friend could get here. And then they went to stay with her until my mom got here. Those are big, sudden stressors for a 5 and 3-year-old. But it was still tolerable because my mom was FaceTiming with them and reassuring them. Then my friends showed up and they're familiar with her and they feel safe with her, and she took them to her house and she loved on them there. Even the police officer, who they had never met before, was very supportive and helped them talk about what had happened and got them their favorite foods and put on a TV show that they liked. She loved on them as best she could with kids who were complete and total strangers to her. It was stressful, but it was tolerable. This kind of stress is also healthy for us to experience as long as it's not too frequent. They do take longer for us to recover from. They have a deeper impact than positive stress, but they aren't traumatic. They can become traumatic if they happen too frequently and we don't have a proper support system that is protective and supportive, though. And now we are coming to the toxic stress, okay? Toxic stress occurs when we have adverse events or exposures that are uncontrollable, unmanageable, and or unmediated by caregiver or community supports. So this kind of stress results in biological or psychological changes that may reduce the opportunity for healthy learning and development. This is what parents seem to think all stress is. But in reality, if your child is in a loving, supportive environment with secure attachments, it isn't. Stress becomes toxic when it is prolonged, intense, and frequent. Your body's fight or flight response is being activated constantly. There is an absence of supportive relationships to help you cope and co-regulate with you. This is neglect, abuse, ongoing unchecked mental health crises, household violence, medical crises without support, okay? What separates toxic from tolerable is the frequency, duration, and supportive and secure relationships. This is the kind of stress that affects development and health because there is a frequent and ongoing activation of the stress hormone response. So when I say your child is stressed, I am not implying that you are hurting them, neglecting them, or that you are in any way, shape, or form damaging your child. What I'm saying is just that they are exhausted from experiencing and expending too much energy on positive stress. And that's a very, very fixable problem. That is what I help you do in Parentsability. Figure out what's causing your child to become stressed and limiting their ability to recover, and help you to either get rid of it or build your child's coping skills around it. Because it's exhausting. And I'm sure you're aware that exhausted children aren't their best selves. Stress takes a lot of energy, even if it's positive. And using our executive skills takes a lot of energy. So by ensuring our children are having as much energy as possible in their tank, it ensures that they'll have the capacity to behave as well as possible. This is one reason I harp so much on predictability and consistency, because those two things reduce a ton of stress. Now, I know that this can be overwhelming. So to get you started, I wanted to offer you my free my free scripts for managing crazy making behavior. The link for them is in the description, and they're a great jumping off point for some ways that you can reduce your child's stress during 10 really common everyday occurrences. Okay? So I hope that puts your mind at ease about stress. I hope it gives you an idea of how to gauge where your child falls along that spectrum of stress, and that you can just take a deep breath and let go of your stress around the possibility that maybe your child is experiencing toxic stress. Chances are, if you're here, if you're looking for support and answers, that's not the case. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask them, and I will see you next week for another Uncommon Sense Parenting class. Bye.